You did mention how stress affects eating, and I know because of what you studied, I'd love to get into that a little bit more. And this is something that you like to talk about too. So tell us a little bit about maybe some common things that you're noticing with stress eating and maybe triggers and how sugar, that kind of stuff that you've talked about.
Right. No, no, for sure. So this is a big thing now because a client will come into a program typically looking for weight management. And once we talk further about triggers, about different habits, the client will end up, just giving over the information that they're eating a lot at night, they're eating when they get upset, and basically emotional eating, right? Well, what we would typically term it. And breaking that down, once we understand that stress has increased and things changed for them, perhaps due to a stressful event, then we go through different lifestyle adaptations, perhaps both working to decrease the stress level. But I like them to understand that the emotional eating is not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
I like them to understand that it's not a matter of willpower. It's not a matter of any personality, weakness. When we are stressed, the body is going to produce cortisol, right? That's one of the main stress hormones. When we produce cortisol, right, the body is going to potentially going into flight or fight, right? We know that feeling stressed, the brain is not going to distinguish between, okay, I'm sitting in traffic and I'm late for this job interview and I'm getting really stressed, or there is a python in my car. The brain's not going to distinguish between the stressor. We're just stressed. So cortisol is released. Our muscles want to have sugar available right away. So stored sugar is released so we can fight this off. We're going to fight off the stressor. 9 times out of 10, or probably 99% of the time, the stressor is not physical, right? The stressor is happening around us. It's our response to it. So the sugar, now we have sugar in our bloodstream. Insulin comes into play, right? So this is the cortisol, sugar, insulin response. Insulin needs to come in, regulate our blood glucose levels again. And now it needs to store that sugar, help that sugar be stored. And that's going to potentially just be converted into fat stored on the belly, and which results in the person now becoming hungry. Okay, so that's sort of a long-winded way to say cortisol is going to cause sugar to be released. Insulin needs to now take care of the sugar because we're not using it. We're not fighting. We're not running. We need to get that sugar out of the bloodstream, have that balanced again. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. It's going to store that on the belly. And now we're hungry. So it cycles through. And once people understand that it's not a weakness, it's not a willpower, by managing the stress, I'm going to release less cortisol. Therefore, I'm not going to go into this huge cycle. Then it makes a big difference. Plus, having different food choices around is also helpful.
Yeah, like sort of what you're able to dive into, it's maybe a little bit more healthy and not going to continue with that cycle, right?
Exactly. So instead of having those highly processed and high sugary foods, which are just going to continue to make us cycle through this, they could have something that is going to be healthier, something on hand, whether that's like a trail mix, for example, a healthy trail mix, some proteins, some complex carbs, healthy fats, those kind of things. Yeah.
And one point that you mentioned that the body doesn't know the difference between the stressors. And I think one of the major differences is that some of our stress doesn't actually go away. If it was a snake, it probably would have been better because it's there and it's gone and your body can deal with it and you're okay. But some of these things, it's like, I'm still late for my meeting and I have to go pick up the kids after this. And then I have to go make dinner. And then after that, I have to go visit or whatever it is. Like there's always something, especially in this modern day and age, to cause this stress. And this is why we continue to go back to these mindfulness practices, this breathing and all these things to help at least physically manage with that stress. And then you're also talking about the other ways of managing the stress and getting out of that stress cycle that people experience.
Exactly. You mentioned a hugely important point, right? So, because what we're dealing with now mostly is chronic stress. So chronic stress has sort of built itself in. to a person, and that's how they manage it rather. And just in this heightened, stressful, to get back to a less stressed state. So what I often tell people when we're practicing these stress management techniques, the goal is long-term stress management, right? We may have these things come up. So I'm back in the car, I'm late for the meeting, I'm sitting in traffic, what have you, or I've blown a tire. And you have these really, really stressful events that will blow over. But we look at the global stress of the person so that we can bring that level down. So when something does happen, it's not going to set off this huge cascade of negative events. It's be like, oh, I can manage this, right? I have enough reserve now, and I understand what's happening, and look at it at the bigger picture. Some of these clients may be referred, as you mentioned earlier. I have a lot of people I can refer to, right? If between us, we feel that they could use a little bit more support. But for the most part, they're very happy to try physical techniques to be able to manage long-term. So we have this practice. I'll need you to practice this when you're not feeling stressed, so that when you are stressed, you'll know where to go.
It'll become automatic almost. You remember how to do it.
Right. Because we know when we're stressed, the brain doesn't want to think any harder. This is very important. So something's happened, it's stressful, the brain goes back to what it knows.
Yes.
Right. So if we can reprogram that slowly, then wouldn't it be nice to get to a point that, oh, I can't believe this is happening. I'm going to go outside for some fresh air, maybe in a cool glass of water. Like if that was a go-to, be amazing, versus what I'm seeing now is I need another cigarette. Right. So we have to slowly practice what we want our brain to do at the time. Yeah.